Okay, right. Well, let's get going. Just to make sure everyone knows, which webinar they've joined and what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be talking, of course, about me codes and knee codes. We're going to be explaining what they are, and then we're going to talk about the implications for big brands and then small brands, and then we'll have a discussion at the end. And as I said, any comments, any questions, pop them in the chat, and we'll try and get round to them. So let me just introduce myself, and Jerry can introduce himself. I thought I'd be, given the topic we're talking about today, I thought I'd treat myself to showing off all of my brand codes. So this is me, this is my graphical style and my colors. The company name, it's not really a company name, it's a catchphrase that I really liked, which is marketing illustrated, because that's what I tend to do these days. I bring concepts that are important to marketers to life through illustrations, through case studies, through analogies, through pictures that hopefully some of you will have seen on LinkedIn. I even got one of my favorite illustrations on my t-shirt today. So that's me. Jerry.
Hello, I'm a co-founder at Behavio, where we share the passion for understanding how brands grow with them, and we're on the measurement part. We're trying to build actionable tools that use the current frameworks and make it really easy for marketers to get a feedback on that. And we also have perhaps more codes, but I'm just sticking with the one that is splashes. And yeah, we also the brand codes, that has been a topic that we loved. We created cards many years ago. That's actually how we met with Dan, when he reposted and illustrated the cards on his LinkedIn, and it sparked a big discussion. And we'll get to that story later, because that's how this all started.
Yeah, so these are the cards that Jerry's talking about.
I guess many of you may already have the link. We also have the online link, so we'll share that in an email after this. Cool. So you can use them. There's 40 different types of brand codes, whether me codes or need codes, and it's good for inspiration, so that you're not just copying the type that already have your competitors, and you can have more options.
And that's really got this whole thing going. It really got me thinking hard about, when we're talking about brand codes, what do we mean, and why is it important for brands to codify both their brand identity, but also we notice a lot of brands are coding more than just their brand identity, which is what we're going to be exploring today, that concept of need codes as well. Okay, so let's get started. Now, before we actually get fully into the content, let's give credit where it's due. A lot of the ideas, most of the ideas, have already been founded on great science and great thinking, particularly by Ehrenberg Bass Institute and Denny Romaniuk. This book that I'm holding up now, which is Building Distinctive Brand Assets, is the tome. It is the reference for this whole area. And there's also some wonderful articles, and I know it's a part of Mark Ritzen's training that talks about codes and code play and stuff like that. So thank you. We're indebted to these people. So now what I'm going to do just for the first few minutes is to clarify what we mean by me codes, before we then explore what that means for big brands. And Jerry's got some new research to share on that topic. So now a me code is just another way of describing distinctive brand assets. Okay, so in other words, those unique brand cues or codes that uniquely identify the brand, and they are the codes that you will ideally be using for decades, for the whole lifetime of the brand, maybe evolving them slowly, but essentially sticking to them for the long term. Now, the phrase me code is simply because we found distinctive brand asset too long, too complex, and marketers don't always know what we mean. So Jerry and I have found that starting to talk about me codes and need codes just makes it much simpler. That's all, but it's not a new invention. Don't worry. Now, again, based on the work of Jenny Romaniuk, we've established why brands should invest in me codes, why they should repeatedly use the same assets, visual assets, audio assets, different types of assets to signify the brand, because we know that that helps brand build a strong mental existence in the brain. It increases mental availability. It gives instant recognition for a brand and familiarity, and we know all of those things help determine whether you're more likely to buy a brand or not. There's an influence on decision making through mental availability. And also, if you have established these brand codes, they also, if featured in your advertising, can make your advertising more efficient. It helps to summon the brand very quickly and easily when people are experiencing the advertising. That makes advertising work harder. So lots of benefits, commercial benefits for investing in me codes. There's also, this is a quote that Jury dug up, which is the original design brief for the Coca-Cola bottle back in 1915. And the brief was to create a bottle so distinct that you could recognize it by touch in the dark, or even when it's broken, line broken on the ground. Now, this illustrates an important point about me codes, which is they have to be highly distinctive. The more distinctive they are, the better. You know, there are a lot of brands out there where their logo or whatever looks a lot like the other logos. I was looking at a lot of insurance company logos, and they often have an eagle on them, you know, or they have a shield shape on them, something that symbolizes something. And you can imagine the brief there was to symbolize protection, etc. But by focusing too much on or focusing on meaning when you're choosing your me codes is a big mistake, because they're less likely to be distinctive. Okay. And the focus here is on distinctiveness and memorability, because this kind of suggests that you've got to be careful when you're choosing your me code to do not just focus, like I said, just focus on the meaning. More important is to focus on the distinctiveness, because that will make it more memorable. The other reason for not necessarily focusing on any meaning is that if your brand pigeonholes itself through its assets to a particular meaning, that can make it hard for the brand to then extend into different areas in the future. So don't limit yourself with something too specifically meaningful in a particular area.
And this is what particular general maniac like tries to repeat many times, because it's an important thing, and basically we think she's right in many things. But then we got to this question, like, what are these then? Because that's basically a question that some people ask like below the dance post of those like cards where we have a lot of examples, and some of the people were like, but these are not distinctive brand assets, because you know there's a different role, it's some secondary thing. And we're like, that's correct, actually. Like there's a different role for these things. Why do they exist? Because why should brands, when they already have some, we call it me codes, where the main role is identifying the brand in the shelf or somewhere, why should they codify on the second level so many things? Like here you can see, you know, everyone tells it's McDonald's, but it's costly to, you know, keep this code alive for many decades. Why do they do this? Or why is there a shot on iPhone like an established, repeated, not just one campaign, one creative? This has been used consistently by Apple for many years. So we were thinking, okay, but they have to have some role, and that's why we came with the distinction or the two things: me codes, where the role is to identify the brand, and the need code, where really the role is to link the brand with a specific need or desire or occasion, basically some kind of meaning. So typically big brands have multiple need codes that connect them to different areas, to different needs, to different buying occasions, whatever. And then because they are codified, they are with the brands for many years, they then have to last decades or centuries. There are many codes, need codes that have been abandoned because basically the need is not relevant anymore. But still, this is not just one campaign thing. And we know from cognitive science that whenever you repeat something, it just works more efficient, because our brain already basically can process it easier. That adds better emotion, that adds better memorability. So it's logical. What we did though first was come up with like 20 codes and measure them on the US national representative sample and see if they really are like famous and connected to. And what we could see that a lot of these actually are by the book the distinctive brand assets, because they are uniquely and famously connected to some brands, so people both know them, and also they don't think incorrectly that they're for different brands. But also what we measured is another axis, and that is whether they are linked with a particular meaning, different ones for each. And as you can see, they are, and not just it's typically not just the main brand need that you would associate just the brands, because as you can see, there's like links like pumpkin spice latte is the device that links Starbucks to autumn, or just to cafe, or you can see Christmas here, or true American drink. So some of the meanings that are not just the one meaning that the brand carries, but is one of the many. And you can basically like map the needs on a particular market. Like here's an example of a couple of needs, not all of the needs that Apple, its iPhone particularly, has to convey. And if you look here, it's really like for each of these, they have some kind of need code. So there's one type. There's not like a bunch of the phone types. There's just clear one, easy to remember, codified iPhone SE, like a value for money, like need code. Basically, there is a shot on iPhone, which is again a consistent way how to say we have beautiful photos and videos. There is the codified way of how they communicate, like privacy, that goes over the campaigns. So often the counter argument here could be like, this is basically the halo effect, because sorry, one more thing. There's as you can see, like Apple is not just often you think that Apple is the emotional thing, and Samsung is the functional thing. But as you can see here, again, this is the US data for the youngest population. It's like the biggest brands, they're not as positioned. They typically need to be connected with all of the important needs if they really want to be keep their leading position. So if Apple, as you can see here, was just that cool emotional brand, which are the needs that you can see are below that, like brand used by influencers or brand popular among my friends, they're super strong there, like relatively to, for example, Samsung. But those needs are not as strong. If they were only the cool brand, they wouldn't be such a huge leader as they are in the US compared to Samsung. And as you can see, it's because they still win, even like in all the different needs. They're still, even when relatively they are not as strong in good price to performance, they're still as strong as Samsung. So they are not the expensive phone. So they need to somehow be connected to all those important needs as a big brand. And back to what I was trying to say like before, is many people argue that this is just the halo effect, that because they are so emotional, somehow this sheds a light on all the other needs, and that's how they are connected to them. We don't think so. I'll show you the example with the Coke, where again, well the need codes, but could you, out of these three need states, typical for sodas, could you think about, either with fast food meals or hot summer days or Christmas, about something connected with a Coke, with a Coca-Cola particularly? You can type it down into, if there's something that pops up in your mind in connection of these. No one's saying anything or typing. No, bring people together. Okay, we measured. I'll show you what we measured. And that's a that's a Santa Claus. Oh yeah, it's already there in the discussion. So basically 88% of people, when you show Santa Claus to them, 88% of people from the people who type some brand type Coca-Cola. So it's not Pepsi, it's not Dr. Pepper, it's just Coke. So that's unique. And as you can see, and like with the other, we were trying to think about some like really memorable one thing that connects Coca-Cola to hot summer days. And for example, I was thinking about this can in the sand, but then I was like, but there's can and sand for Pepsi. So that's not really distinctive. That's not really a unique code. I wouldn't call it a neat code as Santa Claus is. And when you look at the data, which we are going to measure, you can see that relatively Coke is much stronger. So this is basically if both the brands were of the same size, what would you expect them to have? So if the halo effect was the only thing that like basically creates the associations with different meats, we couldn't see this. But as you can see, there's 7 percentage points difference in between people associating Coke and Pepsi. And that's quite, if you, because what it means is that when people are in the need state of let's do the Christmas shopping and perhaps buy some drink, they're much more likely to buy Coke here than Pepsi. And that's quite some revenue, perhaps for the investment. So it could be also the effect that they're over-investing in, like they have unbalanced budgets and Coke just invests more in Christmas. Not sure, perhaps a little bit. But for sure, we don't know about Pepsi being as consistent in their communication of the connection to Christmas as Coke has been. But happy to hear your in the discussion. Happy to discuss it. But let me get to even one ad that we tested because to see this. Because Dan was already mentioning that me codes increase ad effectiveness. How it works? It's because the role of the ad is to connect in our memory some need or just the category or some concrete need, like here the Christmas, to the brand. So when we are in that need state, I want a soda for Christmas, I think of the Coke rather than of Pepsi. And there's like the emotional part that is like strengthening the memory building, so it's like amplifying it all. So those are like the 3 drivers of advertising effectiveness. And when you have the me code, what it does, it's basically it helps you with the brand recall. So it's really typically the brands that have me codes, audio, colors, they have the best branded ads. So that like you have 30-minute, a 30-second TV ad, and there's a lot of the brand me codes, meaning that people all the time know that it's you. And you're somehow, and because they already know them, even the emotion is a little bit higher. So people are more likely to stay with the ad until the end than if you have a completely new brand or something they just don't know. So that's how me codes help. But still, if you just have those me codes, you need to add another message, which is what is the particular message of the ad. So for example, Christmas here. So what neat codes do is they actually can do those 3 things at once with just one, one look or one space. There's not a need to have 2 distinct things. So this is an example of an ad that you can do when you have been investing into creating neat codes. We've tested that. That's one of the best ads in the US we've ever tested, because these are the rankings. So it's basically better than 97% of ads in emotion of the static ones, better than 99% of the need, which was how many people were able to recall Christmas here. And of course, a lot of people, better than 89% of people, they were able to tell this is for the Coke. If you compare it to some different ads, if you're using neat codes, is basically here you can see the attention heat map. So basically people are looking at one spot and they got all the 3 things. They feel this is creative, they know the occasion, and they know the brand. That's why neat codes can help you be more effective in advertising. If you compare it to some normal type of ad where basically you have the logo at the bottom, And there's some, this is in Dutch, I don't know what it means exactly, but basically people are looking at the face, then they read the message, and there's not a great brand recall, because no one in the 2 seconds when they look at this like outdoor ad, no one has the time to look at the logo. So basically neat codes are helping already, but neat codes take this a little bit farther, and that's what's making advertising truly effective when you codify the link to particular need. So that was for the big brands. One last example, and that is basically, I was saying that for big brands it's harder to like be clearly positioned, because they just cannot choose some unmet need, because this is typically some niche need, and just be saying, hey, we're serving you with a different need. They basically need to be good at all the key needs in the industry, which creates a problem how to be unique in that. And that is, again, where the concept of need codes can be useful, because this is an example of a lot of you are here, perhaps from the Czech Republic as well. So you know these two brands, and you know that there's a couple of key needs like fast delivery, wide range, value to money. All the leaders, or those who want to be leaders in this e-commerce industry, they need to be connected with that. And this is a client data, so I cannot like show you the exact numbers, but in fast delivery, Alza and Datart are winning by far over all the others that are there. And it just happens that both of them have some kind of what I would call a need code. Sorry for this translation, how this is translated, but basically a lot of them, like a big part of the population, if I would start saying this rhyme or verse or whatever is that poem, Order by Midnight in Alza box at first light, if I just say the first sentence, they would finish it. And that's a need code that is like connecting this Alza to fast delivery. Datart has this fast art, or Richard in original, that is connecting it in a different way. So both are distinctive in the memory, but they are both basically able to connect those two brands to the fast delivery message. And as you can see here, this is often what how you can create need codes is basically cite or somehow use the me code. So you're just playing with the name. Sometimes you're playing, as in the case of the McDonald's, with the arches. So basically you are using the distinctiveness of the me code to create a particular need code. So that is big brands, but for small brands could be a little bit different. So Dan, if you can please share our thinking on this, all the small brands.
Sure. Before we do that, I'm just going to respond to a couple of questions that have come up. So Nick Williamson was saying, when we talk about need in this context, do we mean category entry points? And yes, we absolutely do. It's again a matter of language, where I found that calling them category entry points, or rather codes that are designed to help your brand address a category entry point, is such an off-putting phrase when language, that we find it much easier just to talk about need codes. But we mean needs in its broadest sense. In other words, any buying context, the reason, the context that leads you to thinking about buying the category, then that could be a need or a desire or an occasion. But need for short is just a shorthand. But yeah, thanks for that question. And Dan Urban's asking, isn't need code just a me code used in a particular situation or for a particular set? Yes, essentially yes, and that's kind of what we think. We think there's the only difference between a me code and a need code, because of course they're both just codes that are linked to the brand over time through repeated use. The main difference is the primary purpose. So a me code primary purpose is to flag the brand's identity, yeah, not say anything about the brand, and you would use that forever. Whereas a need code is a more tactical thing, in the sense that it might be that you want to establish your brand in a particular category entry point, but then that category entry point becomes less relevant, so you stop using that need code and move on. Just one, my favorite example is Verizon in the US. Verizon in the US had this character they used for 10 years, I think it was, more than 10 years, where he would be, it was a long while ago when reception was pretty poor, and he'd go, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" So he was the "Can you hear me now" man. And of course, the answer is with Verizon, you can, because reception was the category entry point, a really important category need that the brand focused on. But then after a while, they've moved on to other things that are now more important.
Well, so if I can, because for example, the Happy Meal package is, I think Dan is asking whether it's just an adapted me code. Sometimes yes, and frankly, I think it's the more effective way when you just use your me code and somehow turn it into the different needs, because you're already using, you know, all the memory around that. But there's also a lot of need codes that are just unique, like the Santa Claus or the Clydesdale horses that we were like testing for Budweiser. There's no usage of the other like me codes, but still they use the horses more to be connected to the, you know, true Americana or something like that. So in that case, it's a like specific thing with no connection to the me code. But again, that means more investment over the time, because so I would think that turning the me code into the me code is a more effective strategy.
Yeah, and I think this is actually really a useful segue into the thinking about small brands, because one of the reasons that Jenny Romaniuk recommends that brands don't have too many distinctive brand assets is that if you have too many, then you won't necessarily have the money to keep using them and keep them all fresh and strong in people's minds. And if you dilute your budget by jumping around from one me code to another me code, you're not going to build any of them. And I think that's the big problem when we talk about the general learnings for big brands, which is you should have several me codes and as many need codes as you feel you need at any one time to win on those big category entry points. As a big brand, that's going to be good for you. A small brand has to start somewhere. If it does a scattergun approach, trying to be memorable in all these different contexts and have multiple me codes with a limited budget, it's never going to get anywhere. And when I say get anywhere, I mean it'll never get any kind of traction in the brain, because the brain, the memories have to build. And also, big brands started off as small brands, right? Think about Dove. Think about Dove. It's a huge brand now, spanning multiple category entry points and different audiences, men, women, babies. But for years, it was one product, which was the bar, and its one need code was washing without drying your skin like soap. So it took on soap, big category, lots of big established brands, and we're just going to focus on the skin side, you know, the skincare side of things. And they did that for decades before they then expanded to different parts of the body, different benefits, needs, occasions, through product and through more need code. Their original need code, I don't remember it, Jiri. Are you old enough? You might be, but so I'm sure several people will. The original need codes were like a splash of moisturizer and the phrase, "A quarter of the bar is made of moisturizer," you know, a quarter moisturizer. That was it. So you've got to, I think it's important when you talk about small brands to think a bit more flexibly and get a foot in the door with one or two memorable things, and that's it. And don't worry as much perhaps about whether your need codes are too limiting. So let's just take that point about limiting need codes. So we actually found it quite hard to find brands where the me code had a meaning that meant that it was too limiting. We found a few. I'll talk about maybe not all of these, some of these, but Gerber is a good example. This is a big US brand of baby foods. In fact, they held a competition for who was going to be the face of Gerber, and someone sent in this sketch, and they've used it ever since. And it has definitely helped them become really well established with babies and baby food. But they have tried to extend into other areas, and they have found it difficult. They tried to move into sort of family nutrition and functional foods for adults. Didn't work at all. They've actually got a series of extensions beyond baby they struggled with. So you could argue that that baby face has limited their expansion. The one area they've succeeded in particularly well, by the way, is, wait for it, life insurance. Now, the reason is because people take out, I believe, this is my theory, sorry, not opinion, is that they succeed in that area because people take out life insurance when they have a baby. That's when they do it, because they're thinking about looking after their family as it grows from a baby. So they had there was a logical way to position the brand being relevant from babies. But beyond that, they really struggled. Now, some of these others, I think they're all Czech brands. So Jerry, you probably know these, you know these much better than me. But for
like Angry Birds actually had to start their own like different brand for women. And we know that like Parfum Caesar was a great starter because it was searchable well, but then the brand basically, because of like it's Notino right now, and they grew like Parfum Caesar, they grew into the like other categories. So, but again, was it like that limiting as big? Basically, because Jenny Romanian here suggests you shouldn't have these because they will limit you. So this is too much meaning that will later limit you, and that is really a question whether like the rebranding before going international, like in Notino, wasn't actually something that helped them early on to be connected when they were still like mostly in the perfume marketing sphere.
But it's a nice problem to have that you've established a brand, you know, in an area, been successful, got some more money, you want to expand. At least it's better than the majority of new startups that fail. So I'm just wondering, in the real world of marketing, whether it's such a bad thing to have something that is purposely not limiting in the long run, but very distinctive and helps the meaning, you know, helps you with your meaning. In the first place. And we did talk also about the pirate party, the political party as well, which started off, I understand it, as a kind of almost a protest joke kind of party, but actually in Czech has become a significant player in the political landscape. And you were saying that you felt
there's a lot of people that actually didn't want just because of the meaning of the robbers and pirates. But again, what happens is after many years, this gets so like such a household name that people stop listening to the original like meaning. So it was a bigger barrier in the like first elections, and then later on, because people just kind of stop thinking about the original meaning and see the brand meaning there.
Yeah, it's like the brand, and we've sensed this in other examples where the brand, after a while, the brand meaning dominates, and therefore people forget the intrinsic meaning. You know, once it's done its job. So this is the kind of debate and discussion we'd like to have. We're now at the point where we're speculating, by the way, just so everyone knows. This is the debate we'd like to have based on obviously clever thinking and examples. So the other thing is sometimes brands have started off with a Miko that could be limiting, like EasyJet, for example. So what do? Well, EasyJet, you could argue, is very limiting. Jet, as in jet plane. They didn't know that they were eventually going to have more than 350 franchises across all these different types of products. But they found a way, which is, I know, let's keep it easy, keep the font, keep the color, and then we'll go easy gyms, easy trains, easy, all of them, hundreds of them. So, and some brands like Starbucks, you know, their logo for years had the word coffee in it, Starbucks coffee. When they decided they wanted to go expand a bit beyond that and not be pigeonholed just as coffee, they changed their logo, but they kept the essence of the logo. So they're not throwing away the equity, but they're evolving it slowly to help with the expansion. For example, I actually think that by the way, this is all opinion now. Weight Watchers, when they rebranded, because they wanted to go beyond weight watching, you know, they wanted to do more holistic wellness and expand into other areas. So they changed to WW and made that mean wellness that works. I think, however, they've thrown away a lot. They basically started almost a new brand there because it's so different from the original. It's not an evolution, which means you're wasting the investment you put to make people know that phrase and that little logo, for example, the little graphic on the left. Same with Dunkin' Donuts. Now we're not saying that these were necessarily right or wrong, but we're just illustrating what brands can and have done when they want to broaden their meaning. Okay. So this takes us on to, and again, goes back, I think, to Dan, related to your question, Dan Urban, which is, well, so given limited budgets, should brands focus on one sector initially, or one area of SEP? And I think there's a strong line of argument that says yes, they should. In any competitive market, this feels like a good way to get the brand to be remembered in the first place. Don't forget, if you focus on one category entry point to get your brand memorable, people will also buy it for others, because that's the maths of it. That's what we know from how brands grow. But we're talking here about building a distinct memory, and doing that around a need is potentially a more powerful way of doing it. So this is our question to you all, should small brands think about dual duty brand codes? In other words, that point that you're purposely using the code as a me code to represent your brand name, but also to help link your brand name with a particular category entry point or small number of entry points. So here are just some examples, so you know what we're talking about. It's finger licking good is a code that helps you that's strongly connected with KFC. It also gives the idea, of course, of it being delicious, absolutely delicious. Red Bull gives you wings, helps you remember the Red Bull brand, but it also suggests something else about energy. It's an energy drink, isn't it? It helps boost mental and physical energy. A lot of you outside of the UK won't know Asda, but Asda have this thing where they tap. Can't we show you on the video? They tap their behind on their pocket to symbolise low prices, shrewd shopping. And Kit Kat, one of the biggest brands in the world, the biggest confectionery brands in the world, still uses have a break, have a Kit Kat, as both a me code, famously keeps the brand memorable, but it also links it to one of the big category entry points, having chocolate when you're taking a break. It doesn't stop people using Kit Kat for other occasions, many other occasions, but it helps remind people. So anyway, this is just some thoughts. If I were a small brand, which I am, I think I would focus, or I would consider these dual duty brand codes that fulfill both the me code need and, at least initially, the initial need code as well. I hope that makes some sense. We're hoping at this point, and I'm glad a few questions have started to come in as well, that we want to open it up.
The discussion got us from really, we understand why Jenny Romanic is so strongly arguing against the meaning, because she basically wants to keep the distinctiveness. But really, when we think about how brands grow, it seems that this makes sense for the bigger brands, where me code is the one thing, and you can build a lot of the need codes to all the, while here, with the small brands, it really feels that, given the limited budget, the one need you should focus on, there's not much space to have the luxury to have a me code that is totally meaning free. So yeah, we'd be really, really looking forward to your thoughts on this.
Yes, and I'd love to hear from Richard Brown. I'm just trying to reply now, but yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I've been thinking about this a lot, which is it a good argument that should me codes really be meaning free? Or do we mean actually that me codes shouldn't be too narrow? They shouldn't have a very narrow specific meaning. But if they have meaning in the general, in a higher order that is likely to remain relevant wherever your brand goes, then that's a good thing. So the ultimate driving machine, for example, here, BMW's code there, so long as they remain in the kind of nice cars to drive area, they're fine. If they want to move into tractors, no, actually would work in tractors, the most drivable tractor. Look, I'm waffling now, Jerry. It's just tell me when to shut up. But the point is, so long as it's broad enough, the relevance is likely to remain relevant wherever your brand goes to in the foreseeable future, then it probably is a meaning is, I think there's no harm. But remember what Jenny says is that it's not that meaning is the problem. It's that if you choose it based on a meaning and you end up with just another brand with an owl because you're a learning institute, that could be a problem because you won't be distinctive. So the priority is if it's really distinctive, it's going to be fine. That's the way I think of it. But be careful where meaning leads you down the path where you end up with just a generic thing that's quite similar to what other brands are doing and showing. That's where you get into problems, and that's where you waste money. That's the key. So it's about distinctiveness, in my opinion.
Maybe we could spark the discussion with what we were trying to. Well, we were trying to somehow sum up our thoughts here. Hopefully, this makes it clear why we felt the need to like find the two types of the brand codes, the me codes and need codes, because there's like different things. So let me maybe read it, and if you please, like you can just like raise your hand here, or write your opinion in the comments here. So this is just not about questions, but also your opinions, please. Basically, we think that with the big brands, that's where the distinction makes the biggest sense, because you want to be limited in the me codes, but because of your need to be connected with all the needs, you need a lot of need codes. So that's the big brand situation. For small brands, it's basically combining these two roles into the one thing that you're going to be focusing on a couple of years before you own that small unmet need or category entry point, and then you can move into other ones. So what do you think about this? Do you agree, disagree? Thanks, Dan. That's basically us.
Okay, I've got another question from Dan that I'm just trying to process. Go on, Joe.
That is, so Dan Urban asks, so the need code is basically asset that builds differentiation, not just distinctiveness. Yes, we think so, because actually...
No, we're going to be careful with that. It's not making the whole brand different based on that necessarily that thing. It's a subtle point. It's not. It's just because I think the language is important there. It's linking a brand strongly with a particular need. Yes, I guess you could argue that is differentiation.
The differentiation is a tricky word, because if differentiation means that different brands should target different needs, then it's not the case of the big brands. Big brands can target different needs. All the big brands have to target the same key need. So if you're an e-commerce leader and you're losing some of the big needs like fast delivery, wide range, or some like reasonable prices, you're going to be losing over time. So differentiation is not the thing for the big brands. And here, as I showed with the examples of the fast art and that Alza poem, I think there's a way how to uniquely target, how to build how both you and your competitor can build different links, different but not the differentiation in means of the needs. So you basically target the same need with different visual memory. This different situation is for small brands, where you have to differentiate a little bit, because it's super hard to take mind share with the limited budget from the big player. So if you enter the e-commerce sector right now, and your story would be, I'm the fastest delivery e-commerce here, you cannot win over those big players who are already strong in that. So your only way is to differentiate by finding some unmet but big enough need that is somehow overlooked so far by the big players. That's where there's a free mind share. And there you should, we think, use some like code that is expressing this need, because it helps you. It's an accelerator. So not sure.
I agree.
Very complicated answer, but hope
I think that question from Dan Urban was spot on, because it does really make you think, and I think he's right. What we are, and you were just saying this, yes, small brands probably should focus on a differentiating aspect, certain areas of need, and then build associations with that need. But knowing that the brand, it's a way of getting in a foot in the door. It's becoming memorable in that category by being really relevant for a particular big-ish or significant need in that category. Even though your brand will be bought for lots of other things anyway. So just always bear that in mind. It's about building memories in efficient, cost-effective ways. That's the way I think about it. It's not positioning a brand so that it's only ever bought for that and will only ever be bought for that. In fact, small brands should have a plan for how they're going to expand beyond the initial differentiated category entry point memories, and probably introduce new need codes as they expand later. So have that in mind early on, if you can. I think we've got another couple of questions there. A couple of thoughts.
Yeah, but it's basically
in
favor of the current discussion. Please, if there's someone who disagrees with something, we would love to hear from you. If you have some experience that is going against what we're saying here, be great to hear, because we really love to think about all the possible scenarios. And
so I'm hearing here that Nick Williamson and Richard Brown are agreeing on this idea that if you have some sort of implicit goal, higher order emotional need, and your brand code captures that, that's a good thing. I think Just Do It is a lovely example of that. Just do it is just a very positive, empowering thought, isn't it? And that's, you can imagine that working if Nike decides to extend in all sorts of ways. That's a really nice example. Julie, I'm just wondering whether we've got a whole load of lovely backup slides to answer questions. Are there any in particular that might be useful for us to share at this point? Having a quick look.
I think that the topic we touched on one of the slides was that also some of the, I think one of the reasons why Jenny Romaniak is saying that the codes have to be meaning-free is that often the big brands feel that their meaning is limiting and they ditch the code. That was the case, for example, with Jaguar. The CEO in the interview said that one of the reasons they got rid of the cat because this aggressive feeling of whatever they felt was there was something they didn't fit their repositioning, which is obviously a big mistake to do. And when we were thinking about those, when you start really with some meaningful code and it's not so limiting, so narrow, it's like the swoosh and the Nike, it's the Jaguar. The bigger it is, the less people feel the real feeling. The original meaning, yeah.
And
so that's why you're then introducing the need codes for your particular new category entry points or whatever, because I don't think that people really care about what the cat really means. Most of them, they're just so used to it. So that again is somehow the support for the argument. Start with clear differentiation, have the meaning there, but then later on use that original thing more like a me code. Don't care that much about the meaning. Add the different need codes. That's, I think, something that works.
Really thinking something about cats. I've got two more cat anecdotes. But did you know Esso Petrol? Yeah, Esso Petrol for years used a tiger, a symbol, tiger, and the reason is the original ads were put a tiger in your tank. Put a tiger in your tank, yeah, because back then some petrols were much better than others, and some would make your car perform well, and some would make it break down. So it was quality. It was a quality signal and about for speed and efficiency. But after a while, that link, it was just the tiger. It's just they used a tiger in advertising. And in fact, in the 80s, when the messaging needed to swing towards value because you had all these other competitors with equally good petrol, they used the tiger as a symbol of looking at night with night vision, tight night vision around the neighborhood, so that they could always have the lowest prices in the morning. So it's good, a good example of a need code that becomes a me code and then adapted and played with to over time. And I think that's probably the way to go with some of these things.
Oh, really? We have a question here. What about combination of needs that are not served by the big brands? Let's say Amazon have very complex products, but complex to use. And second biggest brand is cheap, easy solution. How to build need code that connects that you can do complex stuff that is easy to use.
I'm not sure I fully understand that question. Do you, Jerry?
I'm not sure I have the answer for how to build a need code.
Okay.
I think often it's a creative thing. It's basically I think somehow this need code is like a easy visual, very memorable, like metaphor, like of the reason to believe. So sometimes it's really, the DAF, it has some meaning. So it's basically something that is symbolizing for the old part of brain that like without much rationalization what you want to say. So I don't have a particular say, but yeah, if you feel that there's an unmet need, so basically Amazon is serving some needs, the other brand others, you should go after that unmet need and try to symbolize it with the need code. I think like Angry Birds is a good example where you really symbolize some type of emotional, some target group. Can be limiting, but it's a good example how you can showcase some emotional and functional, because it's for the guys who have the beards originally. So somehow like that, it's really, but just have one. Don't like it's for small brands. It's often a mistake to communicate too many things, and we do it ourselves in behavior. Like it's always you feel that you're better in multiple things, and you should tell the word. But with your limited budget, you should be repeating the one thing all over and over. It's really hard, and I can tell you myself how hard it is.
We've had a question here about what about B2B brands? Can they create need codes? And I'm pretty sure they can. I mean, don't forget that when you launch a new product line, a new product range, a new service, for example, in B2B, that is a way of getting your brand to be thought of for a particular need and bought for a particular need. I mean, products are a big part of that. Product range is a big part of that. And that's where we start to think about brand architecture, where the me codes are at the master brand level that are always used across all of your products and your range. And then you can have sub names, distinctive product names are a way of helping your overall brand cater for different needs in the mind. So, for example, I used to work for Millward Brown, market research company, now part of Cantor, as you know. We were famous for brand tracking, although that was on the decline, and pre-testing. We were very much pigeonholed as the pre-testing people. We wanted to get into brand equity measurement. Brand equity measurement. So we came up with, effectively with our parent company, with a brand equity database called Brand Z. Hopefully many of you have heard of Brand Z, and the A and the Z were in a different color. So you went from the A to Z of brands. In other words, we understand brands, branding, brand equity, and use that as publicity. So that was our need code. And actually that helped us get a lot more tracking work, interestingly, not just brand equity work. It helped support our whole brand, the range of the whole brand. So yes, I'm sure you can. It's more about, like Jerry's saying, it's about budgets and not spreading.
Also, I think need codes are about not complicating with too many things. So this is not an B2B example, but I think we were showing the iPhone SE, and one of the things is they just don't have so many different types of iPhones. A lot of the computer brands or a lot of the phone brands, they have just too many things that you can't even remember. So it's all about the memory. So you can theoretically do more products, but just limiting that helps with the memory. So I think that's a mistake that often B2B brands do a lot, that they just have too many options, too many variations.
And also, try just
just ending that basically keep a few things.
Apple have been clever with their naming, like you say, unlike most brands, because they've used it again and again and again and again over years. So Pro means the more expensive, high-powered version. SE means the affordable version, etc. They have these codes.
And it's repeated, and they stay with that. They don't like
the range, so you know what it means straight away. So it helps, yeah. So naming and brand architecture is all part of how you manage to cater for multiple needs. Ooh.
Okay, thanks for your question. We have 3 minutes left, perhaps. So if you have some more or suggestions or opinions, if not, maybe we'd also appreciate if you can type whether this was helpful for you, or so we can learn from it for perhaps for some next level 2 of this, whether this was useful for your work.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the last question. I'll tell you what, Thomas, I mean, and then to everyone who's still on the call, feel free to connect with me or send me a direct message on LinkedIn. I'm happy to carry on this conversation because I'm fascinated by it and I want to learn. Thank you.
Thanks.
Same
with me, of course. Happy to connect, happy to discuss anything. We happy to go through because this, as you can see, is quite complex. But when we just discuss one brand, like it can be much easier. So if you want to talk more about your brand situation, happy to talk as well.